Good morning, Doug. We're back with viewer questions. Viewers, if you have questions, the best thing to do is join our Telegram group. How do you do that? Well, in the description to this video and all of our videos, you will see a link to our Telegram group. Go there, sign up, and you'll be able to access it. I solicit questions there regularly. Ask your question, and we'll get it answered as best we can. Okay. So, Doug, first question. Is it time for crisis investing yet in places like maybe Venezuela or Sri Lanka? Is it time?
Yes, I see it can be tempting, but my answer would be no. And the reason I say no is that I'm of the opinion that the world is going into some really, really bad times almost everywhere. So even though things look like they're cheap in Venezuela and Sri Lanka and other places, the answer is no. There's two ways you can play this, of course. You can buy stocks or you can buy real estate. Problem with buying real estate in those places is that you've got to monitor it. It's more trouble than it's worth. It's more risk than it's worth.
Mm.
So rule out the real estate. The stocks, well, there's not a lot of information on either of those exchanges. That's tough. So I'd say that if the time comes, and I don't think time's here, you're going to want to actually get your boots on the ground and get to know some people and get some real familiarity with stuff there. So the answer to the question is no, for those two reasons.
Okay. All right, Doug, do you often think about your legacy and what you're leaving behind?
Well, I guess everybody thinks about that thing. It's sure. Well, I guess you can see memento mori there, right? Can you?
Yes, of course. Yep.
Okay, sure. Well, of course, the specter of, of death looms over all of us. But I'm basically a dust in the wind guy. And so that nobody really leaves a legacy. And the fact is, most of the people that leave legacies are horrible legacies. Famous people like Caesar and Napoleon and, well, all politicians, rulers, they leave universally, I'd say just about universally, horrible legacies.
Hmm.
And it all is dust in the wind anyway. I mean, look, this is actually a cosmic question. It's that why should I give a damn what happens after I die? Well, if I'm dead and disappear totally, it makes no difference at all to me. So forget about it. On the other hand, maybe, just maybe, I'll be reincarnated and, or maybe the Indians are right, and the round of samsara and you want to come back in a better condition that you. So look, I just like to do good and help other people, all other things being equal. So the answer to the question is no, I don't think about my legacy because I don't know what's going to happen. But if I can leave something positive, it's just better than leaving something negative on the off chance it makes any difference. I mean, what do you think?
Right. Well, it's a weird thing because on one side, it just seems incredibly egotistical to think that you basically to try and not die by having something that will be more permanent than your own physical self. That whole ego game seems like a mistake anyway. That's the wrong way to go into death is that way. It's like, I want to hold on. There's a problem there, but I also think if you are conducting yourself in a way that my goal, my primary objective is to conduct myself in a way that I will never be ashamed of. There are higher minded hopes I have, but that's the kind of the bottom line. And if you do that, you naturally do. Like, do you have a legacy today? Do you have a legacy already while you're alive? Is there a legacy? Is there proof of life that exists? Are there people that are made improved by your participation in life right now? And if so, then the legacy is there. You don't have to try and manufacture it out post death. It's artificial. It's a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's the idea? We're supposed to build pyramids to ourselves to leave a legacy.
Oh, donate money to Harvard for getting a building named after you. That's
Uh,
what you're supposed to do.
God, God forbid anybody would do anything so stupid as leave money to a university. So I guess the answer to the question is, try to do the right thing every day, and your legacy, if it matters at all, it'll take care of itself.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay. Doug, what do you think about Putin's speech this week about the West? And I think about the inflation. Did you see that?
No, shamefully, I haven't. But I think I've heard that he decries the West as being the new axis of evil, or what's that?
I don't know. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, he's
Oh,
right. I mean, the West is out of control. The Russians are getting a bad deal. Not that Putin's not doing all kinds of dumb and destructive things himself, but seems to me like he's better than 90% of the people that are ruling countries in the West. So I don't know what he said, but from what I've heard, he's probably right.
yeah. Well, at the very least, it doesn't seem like he's intentionally doing things that destroy the lives of his own citizens. And I don't think you can say the same for Schultz in Germany or Ursula von der Leyen or whatever her name is. She's really like Europeans are suffering, and she seems to be presiding over that just fine. And you don't see that same sort of thing with Putin.
That's right. It's so anti-PC to say that Putin is anything other than the devil incarnate, but he's not. He's reacting under the circumstances that he has about as rationally as he can, although it's highly problematical. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Doug, who guards the guardians when it comes to your physical precious metals? How do you know when you put them in storage that they'll be taken care of and they'll be available to you when you need them?
Well, the Bible has spoken to this, and it says, store up not good in this world because a thief will break in and rust will erode, or words to that effect. But it's true. I mean, no matter what you have, there's somebody that's going to try to steal it or scam it, or something is going to happen. It's a real problem. So all you can do is diversify a bit and be as prudent as you can. And it's been a problem since day one of human existence.
Hmm. For gold storage, for gold storage in particular, is there something that people should watch out for to make sure they don't fall into some scam that might be obvious to you, but not so obvious to those of us who are a little newer to this?
Well, there's a group in the Cayman Islands that we talk about in International Man sometimes. It seems pretty good because at least it's on an island. And you can put some money in Singapore, probably okay. Switzerland, probably okay. A few other places, probably okay. I mean, in Uruguay, there's a place called Fort Box Storage Facility, probably okay. I wouldn't put anything in Argentina. Uruguay is a different story. Look, it's a real problem. Even if you put a safe in your house and you bury it in concrete, well, what about the construction guy that put it in
Yeah,
there?
exactly.
There's no way around this.
Yeah. Okay. Doug, do you still think that Russia is just a gas station masquerading as a country? Now, I know that's not what you called it, but that's obviously I was paraphrasing
Yeah,
what you've called Russia before. What do you actually call it?
yeah. I call it a gas station with an attached gun store in the middle of a wheat field. I've been to Russia or the Soviet Union, and both, a half a dozen times, and I find it a singularly unimpressive entity. I really do. Clearly, they've got high-tech capabilities, but most of the place is a backward, third world, depressing country. I mean, that's a huge country. So that's the way I see it. It's too bad because these 12 values of Western civilization that I've enumerated in the past, I'm not sure we've done it here.
We have actually, and I'll link to the video where we discussed it actually in the description.
Okay, because I'm afraid that Russia's problem is that it doesn't check many of those 12 boxes. I don't think it does. So from that point of view, the future for Russia is not nearly as good as it should be and could be.
Hmm. Makes sense.
I'm not. Whereas since these 12 values are collapsing worldwide, there's no place to run and hide anymore.
That's for sure. Okay. Are you able to do a podcast with Jim Rogers as a guest? Say, they know he's an old friend of yours and it would be an intriguing conversation.
Yeah, Jim and I are old friends and we enjoy getting together. The problem is that if we did it at our time, we would have to get him to withdraw from whatever outrageous disco he did in Singapore. But we could stay up late to accommodate him since, yeah, we can work it out. Yeah, we could definitely do that with him. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. Right. Yeah, let's try to make that happen.
Okay. Put it on my list. All right. So next question is, how do you find a reliable real estate broker in South Brazil or Uruguay?
Well, I have one, and you know her. I have a lot of confidence in her. I don't know if you do. Maybe you found somebody you like better.
She's probably the most competent one I found here. Real estate agents are tough, as you know. They're
Yeah, especially in Paraguay. Yeah, we have one. We can refer you to South Brazil. I don't know. Marco Witzer probably knows somebody.
Yeah, he probably does. But the biggest thing is someone if they're really seriously looking at real estate anywhere, you need to be there. I mean, you need to be there. You need to meet with different realtors. You have to figure out.
Yeah, exactly. If you're thinking about it, you're just going to have to get on a plane and hang out. I'd stay for a month.
Yeah.
Way around it.
Yeah. But if you're looking at relocating to a place, you're not willing to go spend a month there to like make sure it works for you, then it won't work out anyway.
No, it's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
So first things first, okay?
Yeah, exactly. All right, Doug, what's your favorite TV show of all time?
That's pretty easy. Have Gun Will Travel. No question. And it's on, I think it's on YouTube. I mean, it's a work of genius. I mean, it's really well done. And Richard Boone was the perfect guy to play Paladin. And Paladin is a perfect character.
What's the basic structure of a TV show?
Yeah, a lot of people are familiar with the phrase "have gun will travel," but have never watched the TV show. And basically, it's about a guy. He's halfway between a private detective. He's a problem solver who likes to avoid violence wherever possible, but when necessary, he's quick on the draw. What he does is he sends his business card. He has Hey Boy at the Carlton Hotel in San Francisco, where he has a suite of rooms, give him the paper every day, and he reads the paper to see if there's somebody that has a problem someplace. And if so, he gets his card, which says, have gun will travel, wire, Paladin. People don't use wires anymore, but that was his address, Paladin, San Francisco. And he determines a fee to solve the person's problem, whatever the problem is. And he goes there, sizes up the situation, and solves the problem. Now, sometimes he's got to kill somebody, but he likes to avoid that whenever possible.
It's kind of like a one-man A-team in a way. Right.
Kind of, yeah. And he always looks at the ethical considerations.
Exactly.
What he has to do. And sometimes that means returning the money to the person that hired him and working for the other guy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it was a great show. And I believe they have all of them now on YouTube. You can see for free. So, which is great. Definitely check them out.
I've got to promise myself to watch one every day because the series ran for 5 years. So there's probably about 100 of them or something.
Yeah, and each episode might be 21 minutes or something like that. They're pretty short.
Black and white, relatively low production values, but That's not why you watch it. After that, it's not really a series, but it kind of is I love Deadwood. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, Deadwood's the best thing that's been done on television ever, and some of the best writing since Shakespeare. Huge fan of Deadwood. And I'll give you a third one, The Mentalist
Sure.
with Simon Baker. Really well done, well thought out.
Interesting. Okay. Awesome. Good. Let's see. Nice.
You're on.
I mean, well, Deadwood is my number one. I think that's a fantastic show. Kind of related to that, I like a show I shared with you, Hell on Wheels, or the Building the Railroad Across the West. I like the first couple seasons of that, especially. I liked a lot. I thought that was very well done. Um, yeah, there's only two that come to mind at the moment, but yeah, I like that. That would be best.
I'll give you two more that are interesting. I love watching Rick and Morty, especially in the early movies.
I can't believe I forgot that. Of course.
Yeah, I mean they're works of genius, as is South Park. Although South Park is unnecessarily crude sometimes, so it dilutes its content. But I love South Park too.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I remember watching one South Park episode on a plane traveling internationally somewhere, and I was laughing so hard I couldn't control myself during it, and was drawing a lot of undue attention to myself because I couldn't contain my laughter. It was amazing. So, but yeah, sometimes they go a little too crude.
Yeah, that's right. But it's hilarious sometimes.
Okay. Next question is, Doug, do you think that the quote good humans will win and it'll be a fair world, the collapse of civilization, or something in between? So, will the good humans win and it'll be fair world, or there'll be a collapse of civilization, or will it be somewhere in between?
Yeah, well, everybody thinks that he's a good guy, and that includes Mao and Stalin.
Yeah.
They both thought they were doing the right thing. I'm not terribly optimistic about that, because if we define the good guys as people that have libertarian values, live and let live, and believe in peace and freedom and nonviolence, I'm afraid that we're in a small minority. On the other hand, people have survived for hundreds of thousands of years so far, and I guess we'll continue to survive on some basis. But the good guys winning, I don't think so, because it's like every human has psychological aberrations in his mind. They're activated by outside forces.
Hmm.
There's almost no getting around it. So,
Yeah, another thing is just good guys win, assuming that it's one singular titanic battle between one group that's bad and one group that's good. We live in a world of really crazy complexity where obviously some of the powers that be are trying to move things towards synchronicity or getting things, what's the word that they use for the tax system?
oh yeah, they have a word for that. It's not correlation.
Harmony, tax harmonized. Yes.
Okay.
There are real efforts to like get that done, to make things all one and maybe one world government, whatever. But still, it's not a titanic battle singly between a good group of people and a bad group of people. It's a whole bunch of individuals trying to find their way through the mess. And so would there be good humans who do? Yeah, of course it will. But winning, not on a singular grand scale. I don't think that's possible.
I'm afraid not. And right now I'm reading a very well-written book by a scholar I really respect a lot. His name is Tom Shippey, and it's called Laughing Shall I Die, which is a history of the great Vikings and an interpretation of why the Vikings were as violent as they were. And this is a whole civilization that was all about killing the enemy or killing anybody. It was like a gigantic death cult in a way.
Yeah.
And this whole civilization, and they're really no different from any civilization. And we're just damned lucky to live in 20th century America, 21st at this point, which has been the least violent and the most productive and the mellowest civilization in world history. We could easily revert to the days of the Vikings. which could be noble and heroic, but life could easily be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any recommendations regarding books for children about critical thinking or just in general? How do you teach critical thinking?
I don't know of any kids' books.
I don't
What do you
either.
think?
I don't know of any kids' books, but that's why I was expanding it to if you know of any way that you might go about teaching someone critical thinking. And think about it, younger person would be obviously easier, but
I've been told that Rick Mayberry's Uncle Eric series are excellent,
mm,
which are used for homeschooling. That might be good. I haven't read them. I like Rick a lot. Haven't read his books. I understand they're great.
yeah, no, I have read those and they're good. They're a clear-eyed view of history that is not generally covered. And the way it explains things, it's very rational and it's useful, but it's still, I don't know if it teaches how to think properly.
Mm.
I don't know if there's a book that could possibly teach how to think properly. It seems to me there might be teaching moments with your kids where you can say, here's, look what just happened. How could it have gone differently? And I think those moments provide opportunities to provide critical thinking. We're confronted with a challenge. How do we go about tackling this challenge? How do we get around it? I think in life you can encounter those things, but that's much more, it's not a book, it's active parenting is what I know people don't want to do that way. I want to send the kids to school and have them indoctrinated. But the best way I think parent is you look for these things constantly and talk to the kids all the time about what's happening or why it's happening or what they think about it. Because then you can also imbue it with morality and ethics, which I think is the biggest thing that's most lacking.
Yeah, that's right there. But even then, you've got Marcus Aurelius. His son was Commodus. Well, how did that happen? And then you've got Nero, whose tutor was Seneca. How did that happen? I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And for that matter, you've got Alexander of Macedon, whose tutor was Aristotle. And it was a mess for her.
Yeah. You can't control the way your kids end up. That's for sure. I agree. You can influence it. I think this question though about how do you teach them critical thinking is how you transfer a specific skill doesn't guarantee outcome. But I think there are ways you can teach because it basically teach people to isolate a problem and start breaking it down into its contingent pieces and seeing how it can be influenced one way or another. I think that's fundamentally what critical thinking is.
Yeah. And looking at not just the immediate and direct consequences of, but the indirect and delayed ones, which is like playing three-dimensional chess if you go out far enough. But it's interesting. So, yeah.
But when you actually mentioned chess, actually, that's a good example of something that would teach you critical thinking. That's a game that requires critical thinking to be effective at. And I mean, games like that could be very useful, I think, in teaching critical thinking, right?
Yeah, games of all types are actually quite good
Mm.
that way. I like poker as a game, which is helpful for figuring out what the other person is thinking, what he's thinking, you're thinking. It's all helpful.
Okay. So the next question is about advice for somebody who has a daughter who is living in the US. Basically, this person is about my daughter's age, if I recall. So let's use a teenager. I know that. What advice could they give their young daughter to survive and thrive in this new world order that's upon us? 'Cause she's thinking that the advice would be different for a boy or a girl, but like, still, what ideas do you have?
I think it's a lot tougher having a daughter than a son.
I concur.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just need to be observing. That's the case, number one, for lots of different reasons. And I think the best thing that you can do is to try to get your daughter to be as close as she can be to, let's say, a Laura Croft, but with a moral foundation.
Mm.
She should be able to do everything and know everything and think everything and experience everything that she can so that when she goes out into the world, there's no guarantee that the first arrow that flies at her won't put her down and it's all for naught. Right. You got to tilt the odds in her favor. So that's what you got to do. You've got to help her gird up her loins to do battle in this dangerous world that you're going to send her out to.
Yeah, the thing is, it's dangerous for them now. It used to be that while they were growing up, it was somewhat protected. But if they're engaged in government schools or whatever, if they're using the technology that everyone uses, then they're actually under assault the whole time. That's why we see people questioning their gender, like kids doing this in a crazy way. They're just part of, they're being psyoped big time. So they need some offense against that.
Yeah. And the other young chimpanzees that she's hanging out with are almost all going to be bad influences for just that reason. So maybe the best thing you can do is to watch that movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, and to put her in an environment where she's brought up like the Arnold character was.
Yeah, might be best. It's such a problem. I think about this all the time with my daughter, and I think the best thing you could do is you want to give them some sense of something that's bigger than all the stuff that's happening around them as a reference point. I think if they were religious, and I know you're not, but it would be helpful because when they're under assault with all of these other things that are happening, if they actually believe that there's something that's bigger than them and bigger than their friends and bigger than the friend relationships that they have, then they can use that as a reference point at least. It doesn't have to be religion, obviously. Maybe it's the family, or maybe it's just ethics. But if you believe in good, then when they see things that aren't good, they'll be better equipped to be able to reject it. Because I think that's the problem now, is that things are being presented to young people in a very confusing way, and they're very inclined to mirror everyone around them. So they're weak. If they have something to combat that, some ideal to combat that with, I think they're best off. But if they're already a teenager like my daughter is, I almost think it's too late at that point to introduce it. It's just too late.
Yeah. And there's no question that there's much, 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 much more in the way of outside, mostly negative influences that are constantly shoved at kids today. This is a big difference. It was hard. It's never been easy, but it's much harder now.
Yeah, I think so. All right, Doug, next question. Do you own a lot of books? With digital book burning, et cetera, do you recommend acquiring copies of important literature? And if so, what would be top on your list?
Hmm. Well, actually, that should be directed to you because you're importing a library to Uruguay.
Yeah. Well, you don't own as many as I'm buying in this library, but you own quite a bit
I've got a
as well.
I've got a pretty fat assortment of books, both here and in Argentina, and to a lesser degree in Uruguay too. But top books, well, Jesus, there's so many books, so little time. They say that even a well-educated person can't read more than 2,000 books in his lifetime. And I guess we can kind of look at how long it takes and the number of days and hours you have to read them.
Mm.
It's probably a reasonable guess for a really well-read, educated person. 2,000. My God, I was putting together a list of the top 2,000 books in history. Look, just reading the 13th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica is almost a life's work. Or just reading the great books that Mortimer Adler put together. That's almost a life's work in itself. Right. Just talking about a shelf like that, or like that. So it's a Sisyphean task. There's always new books coming out, some of which are excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many books are digital now. And I know you have a strong preference for reading just physical books, of course. And I do too. I do read some digital books, but I prefer physical. Do you think there's a risk of lost knowledge with all of this move toward digital?
Yes, it does seem possible that for all kinds of reasons, the digital stuff could disappear. It could be anything from a serious solar flare to a nuclear war that takes down routers and computers and God knows what. So there's lots of reasons to prefer the hard copy books.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that I buy, frankly. Look, I spend enough time on a digital screen as it is. I don't want to do more by reading a book on it in addition.
Exactly. I agree 100%. Also, you can't browse. I have not found a way to effectively get value out of browsing my digital books, but I can look at my bookshelf and be reminded of the books that I've read and the ideas in them. Sometimes it kind of sparks a creative interest or idea in my head that was dormant just by simply browsing them. So I think there's just great benefit in being able to have them around you, to physically see them and be reminded of all the great knowledge and the ideas that you've read. But you can't immediately pull it out of your head. You need some trigger, some mechanism to bring back the memory of some of these ideas. At least I do. And just simply seeing the book seems to be the most effective trigger I have for that.
I completely agree. You say, well, how's it possible to absorb knowledge by osmosis? But like you just said, you almost can.
You almost can.
Yeah, that's the way to fly. Exactly. I'm reminded of that cartoon in the New Yorker where somebody's got a Kindle and an iPad and something else and this wonderful looking wooden library with no books except for those three electronic devices.
What a waste.
What a waste, right?
Okay, next question. I'm an American currently in Uruguay with my family seeking residency. My wife and I would like to have another child. Would you recommend that we give birth here or in Brazil for additional citizenship?
I would go to Brazil, frankly. It's a good passport. Yeah, it's just across the border from Uruguay. I don't know what the current Uruguayan law is where a kid is born, and does it make it easier to become? I don't know.
I don't think they have the anchor baby approach here, especially if you're seeking residency already in Uruguay. You'll be on the path to citizenship here anyway, and your whole family will. So if you go across the border, give birth in Brazil, and then you got an anchor baby and a whole new opportunity.
Yeah, nothing to be lost, something to be gained. I think that's the way to fly. Brazil is certainly one of the best choices for automatic, more or less, citizenship because, yeah, that's definitely what I would do.
Okay. Doug, how do you think the crisis in Europe, the fertilizer, food, inflation, energy, et cetera, will affect countries in Latin America? And which countries in Latin America are best or worst suited to maintain some kind of normalcy in the upcoming years?
I think we talked about this the last time. And the bottom line, at least from my point of view, is if you're a European, get the hell out of Europe. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. You don't sit there and act like a plant. Definitely, I would leave Europe. I just don't see the advantage of staying there. And where would you go?
But what are the consequences of how do you think the shitstorm in Europe will affect Latin America? What are the knock-on effects for Latin America?
Well, lots of immigration from Europe, which I suspect would be a good thing because it's always the best kind of people that tend to emigrate to improve their personal situation and they tend to be freedom seekers. So I would think that the trouble anywhere is trouble everywhere today. But that said, I think that Latin America could benefit a lot from, in some ways, from the troubles in Europe.
Right. We have a mutual friend, a Dutch friend here, who I think a pretty outrageous prediction, but he's lived here for a long time and has a good sense of both Europe and Uruguay, where he said that he expected the population of Uruguay could double over the next decade. Now, I think that's crazy, but that's what he said.
Yeah, I think he went too far, but he's a smart and experienced guy. Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. What role do physical silver and gold play in an economic collapse?
Maybe a pretty big role because if things get bad, people aren't going to want paper currency. And if they're smart, they're not going to want to use the government's digital currency. So I think surprise to everybody, it could go back to transacting value with gold and silver coins. I think it's entirely possible in the near term future, next 10 years anyway.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought so. You and others have talked about this for a long time, but I'll tell you, up until about 2 years ago, I was doubtful of that. But every day that goes by now, where the central bank digital currencies are clearly coming, it's clearly like locks you in and really difficult to get out of. The crackdown that's happening right now with cryptocurrencies and is only going to accelerate in that environment. The war on cash that's happening all over the world. And that environment, it just seems it is the last refuge. It's the last place. So let's just say I was just on the phone with someone earlier this morning about acquiring some more gold here in Uruguay. So I'm following that advice myself.
Yep, I agree. I don't know where else you go, frankly. I mean, sure, Bitcoin, all right, that's good. But I like to have some stuff in my own palms.
Yeah. That really is the anonymity of something. I mean, even cash offers a great anonymity. They take that away. We know that Bitcoin has lots of problems with it can be tracked in many, many ways. So that's a problem. And I know there are crypto solutions to that, but there is something about something you have in your possession that can really be anonymous. The value of that's not going to go away.
No, I don't think so. And it's actually going to go up a lot. So, yep, I agree. Just try to buy some silver coins and buy some gold coins whenever you've got some spare cash. Just end of story.
Okay. How do higher oil prices and I think energy prices in general affect the gold miners and the royalty companies?
Affects gold miners badly because gold mining is energy intensive. So it's going to impinge upon their earnings. But royalty companies, so one of the advantages of royalty companies is that they get a half of a percent or whatever the number may be of all the gold that comes out of that mine in refined form. And energy prices are the mining company's problem. It's not the royalty company's problem. They get the gold regardless. So two different things. One bad, one neutral to good, kind of.
I've heard the major gold refiners, I think, are in Switzerland, right? And I've heard that they're, because of the energy prices there going up so much, that some of them are looking at shutting down or reducing production. What effect, if there were a bottleneck in these processors, the refiners, what effect would that have on gold? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, I'm not so sure because the premiums on gold and especially silver coins are outrageous right now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time I looked, I thought they were outrageous. So that if I owned a refining operation turning bullion into coins, I'd be working 24/7 to take advantage of those premiums, even though my costs are higher. I'm not sure what the boots on the ground facts of the matter are, but that's what it seems like to me.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I just saw a headline about it. I didn't read the article, so I don't have much information to add, but okay. Next question. Given the fourth industrial revolution and the automation of jobs with AI, or at least this theoretical automation, we haven't heard seen any of this yet. What skills or careers should we learn in order to survive the next few decades?
Hmm. Yeah, well, things that only a human can do, ideally. Question is, how advanced is AI going to get? And once again, I think it's going to boil down to critical thinking and trying to cultivate wisdom, which I'm not sure AI is ever going to be able to do.
Right.
Listen, we just don't know. So the answer to the question, try to get a broad panoply of mental and physical skills so that no matter what happens, you're not going to be left high and dry. And your life will be better because of that, even if nothing happens.
Right. Okay. So do you think that uranium producer and mining stocks will have another dip, or is it just up and to the right from here?
I think it's up and to the right from here because all these crappy little mining stocks, and to a lesser degree, that's true of oil stocks still. They're really, really cheap at this point. So I think it's the bottom. In fact, I can't find financings to engage in because most of these companies, unless they're desperate for cash, don't want to sell shares. And the way I like to buy shares in companies, including uranium companies, I hasten to add, is with financings where I can get a warrant in addition to hopefully a discount from the market price. They're not really much available today because nobody wants to sell stock because the stock price is just so cheap. So yeah, I remain super bullish, including on uranium. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I think uranium, it's not an if proposition, it's a when proposition. And my answer to the when is pretty damn soon now. It's starting to look like it did 20 years ago. Same situation.
Well, you definitely see public sentiment changing around nuclear power at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Desperation makes for strange bedfellows.
Sure does. Okay. The last episode we talked about that you should have made the right choices so that you're in a position today so that you can get us another crib somewhere else outside of the US, for instance. We talked about that. But this viewer says, well, for those of us who only recently found Doug and are not in a position to flee the country, how might people in our position best prepare? He says, keep in mind, we have older parents and children to care for. We live in Kansas where most people away from the cities are pretty normal.
You're probably in one of the best places you can be. I guess the answer is get to know your neighbors and hope they're neighbors that share the same values and think the way you do. That's a good plan B.
Yeah. I'd say the thing I add to that is just trying to be as disconnected as possible from centralized systems. So there's more insulation between you and the world. If you look at all the people in Europe that are dealing with these incredibly high energy prices now, if they had their own energy production on hand, if they had a solar system or something like that, if they had something, then they wouldn't be squeezed in the way, which it's these pressure points where the state can kind of force you into actions you wouldn't otherwise choose on your own. Just like people who made the choice to keep their job, they wanted to keep a job, then to get vaccinated. They didn't really want to do it, but they had to keep a job because they were dependent upon the job. So any dependency on these systems can become areas where you can get squeezed suddenly and unexpectedly and can sort of upend your whole world almost overnight. That's what we see in Europe right now.
Yeah. And if you can avoid it, you don't want to be in a city.
That's for sure.
Being in a city is great in good times when things are getting better. But other times, I don't think in fact, it's a very bad idea. If you're out in the country, you ought to have a few months supply of food because there's no guarantee that food is going to magically appear on the shelves of the Safeway. Just do that and get your own power supply and so forth. I mean, I hope I'm dead wrong. And we go into the forms again.
I do too.
We can't discount those friendly aliens landing on the roof of the White House and kissing everything and making it better. Maybe it'll happen.
Yes. I mean, I hope so. I really do.
Yeah, kind of a long shot, bet, but
yeah, it'd be a big one. Okay. Why does Doug do what he does with all these questions and interviews and imparting knowledge? I mean, he's made it and he's made it out at the right time. So what motivates you to do this?
yeah, that's a really good question. I'd like to believe it's a belief in good karma. And, everybody likes to stay relevant. Let's look at it this way. Maybe, really, at least on one level, you're only as alive as you can communicate with other beings. Otherwise, you could be in a really, really comfortable and nice solitary confinement. But we're social animals, and I do like other beings, some other beings, although quite frankly. So I guess that's the reason. You want to feel alive, and if you want to feel alive, you want to communicate.
I hadn't thought of it like that. If you made it and you've got everything you need. And what's the whole idea? I guess you exit from life and retire, you go off into the sunset. But that actually is basically not much different than death, right? I mean, if you're not engaged,
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to think about being able to sit in the sun and Padmasana and contemplate reality and meditate. But that can be too much of a good thing, even if you do it.
hmm, hmm, okay, interesting. All right, Doug, what do you think about Paraguay with its 10% flat tax and its easy pathway for permanent residency?
I'm a fan of Paraguay. The weather mostly sucks, and it's kind of in the interior of the continent. But yeah, I'm a fan of Paraguay. It is a strange country because of its history.
What is the strange part of its history?
Well, for instance, its wars were, which war was it? Because they've had a couple serious wars. One where something like 90% of the men of military age were wiped out. And that's had an effect culturally on the remaining grandmothers told their daughters, if you get a man, take good care of him because they're at a premium, stuff like
Mm,
that.
mm.
And all the German immigration there, both the Amish and let's say more recent German immigrants with unpopular political views, and the fact that they don't just speak Spanish, the other national language, and most Paraguayans speak it, is the Indian language, Guarani.
Mm.
That's pretty unusual. It's a strange country.
Mm.
It's a very unusual place. But I like Paraguay. I'd like to spend some more time there. But you just can't be everywhere, unfortunately.
No.
And until recently, it was really easy to get a second citizenship in Paraguay. And I think it's still very easy to get permanent residence there. You basically just spend a day with your lawyer, and your lawyer will bring all the police and everything to their office. And it's good to have a permanent residency. It used to be quite easy after that. I don't know how it is now to get citizenship. Yeah, Paraguay. Don't overlook Paraguay.
Mm. Great. All right. Let's see. Another question about crisis investing. I think we covered that. Next question is: any chance of doing a live Q&A? We did a couple live Q&As in the very beginning. I don't know if you remember where we streamed it live into questions on YouTube.
Yeah, we do one with Jeff Berwick.
We did do one with him as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of this doing this. That this 2-year anniversary is the 14th of this month,
Hmm.
next week.
Well, busy hands are happy hands.
Yeah.
This has kept us busy for hours a week.
There has. Yeah. Maybe we can do one for that or sometime. We should try one again at some point in the future.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Last question for you, Doug. I think this is an interesting one. If you were to have some drinks and a cigar with Neil Stevenson, the author of The Diamond Age, that inspired you to popularize the file concept, what questions would be on your mind and what would you like to ask Neil?
Well, oddly, a good friend of Neil Stevenson's is a good friend of mine who runs a shellfish company in Seattle, which is
Where he's raised, yeah.
basically where he's based. And I understand, I don't know if this is the case, that either my friend or Stevenson has kind of a party, invitation only, obviously, and I could go there, but I've never taken advantage of the invitation to fly there and spend the day hanging out. So I'd like to meet Stevenson because he's obviously a really smart guy and it would be fun. But I don't know what questions I'd ask him. But I get the impression that he's maniacally writing more books all the time and big fat ones.
Yeah.
So,
every 18 months or so, he's got something coming out. Even now.
yeah, I don't think he really is looking for outsiders to come and impinge upon his time. I think he's seriously dedicated to being a serious writer.
Mm.
I don't know what questions I'd ask him. I guess we just have a conversation and see if we got along. Maybe we wouldn't. I mean, there's people I like their books and we don't get along, and I've met them.
Yeah.
just don't get along. So
Well, yeah, he has gone more. I think I did see him speaking at. I did see some YouTube thing he was doing. I think he was talking at some foundation called the Long Now Foundation, and he was talking about his latest book, and it was pretty global warming, carbon as a problem, that kind of thing.
yeah, well, long enough. I think that's something that Stuart Brand put together, and I got to know Stuart Brand years ago when he came to the first Air Society meeting, and I haven't been in touch with them. But I think the long now is Stuart Steele, and they're a kind of techno hippies, is who they are.
Techno hippies. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, look, I think that's all the questions for today. So let's leave it there and be back next week.
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure. Weekend is upon us. Make
What
no
to do?
difference where I am. One day is the same as another.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it does all run together in the end, no matter what. Anyway, but
Because we don't have to go to,
the clock in.
yeah, we don't have to, yeah, we don't have to punch the clock.
Oh, thank God.
A cubicle or anything like that, which is not
God. Thank God. Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.